This episode of Dispatches from Planet Albany is brought to you with support by New York State United Teachers, which represents more than 600,000 educators and school-related professionals in New York. Dispatches is also supported by the public affairs firm O'Donnell & Associates. For more information, check out o'donnellsolutions.com. Before we begin today's program, I wanted to let listeners know we are rapidly approaching our 100th episode of Dispatches from Planet Albany, and to commemorate this very special moment, we're looking to hear from you, the listener, with your questions about the show, the people on it, and Planet Albany in general. So shoot us an email to david.lombardo@wcny.org, connect with us on social media, or record a message that we could play on the show by calling 518-650-1463. That number again is 518-650-1463.
I've also declared war on potholes, so here's the first shot across the bow.
Well, as you know, with Planet Albany, there's always something that makes the planet turn.
And it's this amazing view of D.C., and Eddie Vedder comes out. And he goes, "You have a cigarette?" And I've never smoked in my life, but if I had, I wish that was the moment.
And this strategy takes us from potholes to knotholes.
I would like to say it was a pleasure, Mr. Kim. But I'm on the road.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is Dispatches from Planet Albany, a podcast about power and politics in state government. And specifically on this episode, we're getting into how lobbyists prepare to wield power over the legislative process at the Capitol. And while the 2026 legislative session is still months away, that doesn't mean this is a time to get complacent. And to discuss fall activities other than leaf peeping and apple picking, we're joined on the show by Doug Clark, co-managing partner and government affairs team leader at Shenker Russo Clark. Thanks for making your return to this show, Doug. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. I really appreciate that.
Well, before we get into preparing for the 2026 session, let's talk about overtime work from the 2025 session. What does your life consist of right now? Is it primarily about getting bills signed, vetoed, and chapter amendmented, or is there other cleanup work from 2025 that I might not even know about?
So, yeah, it depends on, where you are.
Okay.
So there a lot of bills out there still haven't gone down to the governor. So there's a lot of discussions back and forth with the governor's office, with sponsors about chapter amendments and things like that. Some of them are trying to get chapter amendment discussions even started. Mm-hmm. Others, there's an understanding that there will be discussions and you're just trying to get to them at that point. Other things are maybe there are issues that you had left over. There's still pie-in-the-sky talks out there, and they're not really pie-in-the-sky, about the legislature coming back. Are they going to come back?
You think so? It seems pie in the sky, and if you're willing to take action on this, I'll bet against them returning in 2025.
I'm not taking that action.
Okay.
No, they're not. I don't think they're coming back. But, you always have to be prepared if they do. So
with like a wish list in case, hey, if they do come back, here's what we're going to ask for. It might not be on the menu, but maybe we can order off menu.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Because when I worked inside, I always say you don't want to open up the cookie jar. And whenever you come back, there's always a chance that the cookie jar could get cracked open. Mm-hmm. And if it does, you want to try to make your issue one of the cookies that gets pulled out. But generally, if they're going to come back, it's going to be for something very specific. Be it redistricting, or it doesn't look like they need to come back to deal with any, current year financial issues. Yeah, absent those two, I don't see anything bringing them back.
You mentioned chapter amendments. When does the meaningful discussion about chapter amendments happen? Is it prior to the bill getting sent over to the governor, or do you feel like the conversations don't really heat up until that final clock is going? Because it seems like here in Albany, nothing serious happens until you're ever on a clock, whether it's the March 31st budget deadline or the end of session. So when do those serious conversations happen?
Oh, yeah. I mean, working in government, or at least the legislative end of things, it always seems like, you're still in high school, you're still in college. Nothing gets done until the due date. Mm-hmm. And, some of that is just strategic. Why make a decision before you have to? As to when discussions start on chapter amendments, it really depends on the issue. Mm-hmm. Some of them, the sponsors are set in stone. They're like, no, this is it. Especially if you've done negotiations beforehand with them. that's sort of the double-edged swords of engaging with sponsors. If they've made changes that you've requested, it does make it a little bit harder to go back and say, now I want these more changes. Doesn't mean you don't, but it does make it a little more difficult to ask for more. But, that's what clients want you to do. That's, representing your client to the best of your ability. And sometimes you've had separate conversations with the governor's office, and they'll be like, I hear you, we'll deal with it. And then, when the bill gets sent down, or they get an idea that the bill is going to be sent down, serious discussions will take place. The sponsors may or may not get involved. Sometimes it's mostly staff. It, really depends on the bill, the members, the issue. It could go any number of different ways. If it's a small technical change, you don't necessarily need to get everybody involved, but if it's a more policy-oriented, changing the nature of the bill change, then you get more people involved.
And in terms of engaging with the governor's office, because even as we speak in early September, there are hundreds of bills that still need action. Do you just sort of try to flag your bill and say, hey, talk to me now on this issue? Or do you say, hey, I know you have a lot of stuff. Where am I in the queue? Is this a November issue for you guys? Is this a December issue? Is this a September issue? How do you get on their radar, and how accommodating do you need to be on scheduling in order to not risk them being like, leave us alone, we're still dealing with X, Y, and Z?
Oh, I mean, they have no problem telling you to leave them alone. That's you have to get used to that and don't be offended by it. Generally, if you've already been engaged on the issue with the governor's office, they know that you're interested. So oftentimes they'll reach out to you when they're, starting to examine a particular issue. Sometimes it depends on the council and their issue areas. Sometimes, they'll say, look, these are all the bills in my issue area. Can you send me everything you got? I want to start planning things out early, and you get in and you do it then. The other people that you keep in touch with are the houses of the legislature, because it's the legislature that sends the bills down. Now, generally, there's this tacit agreement that they won't send a bill until the governor's asked for it.
Yeah, they're pretty differential.
But, every once in a while, the legislature will say, no, we're sending this one now. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen.
And is this time period and the way that Governor Hochul evaluates bills that made it through the session any different than the 11 years of Andrew Cuomo, or is it pretty similar?
There is a bit of a difference. Cuomo would be more interested in rewriting the entire thing. You could, if that's what you wanted, and you could convince him, he would, go that far. Generally, Governor Hochul has tried to work within the parameters of what the legislature has passed. Again, that's not always the case.
Well, because there has been reporting, at least from her first couple years in the executive mansion, about her using the chapter amendments a lot, and I don't know whether that's something that stands out to you, because, as you said, the previous governor loved to rewrite a bill, but maybe it was just for some of the higher profile things, whereas this governor maybe isn't as engaged during the legislative session and therefore relies more on chapter amendments. I don't know. I'm all from the outside.
So one of the differences that exist was Cuomo would have this tendency to, at the very end of session, suddenly swoop in and have a whole bunch of issues that he wanted to get involved with. And at times like that, that's when you ended up with, the colloquial big ugly. You haven't really seen that with Governor Hochul.
No.
She will take issues as they come. Again, they don't get too involved during the session into as far as negotiating. And some of that is change in the stance of the legislature that happened when Cuomo left was, we're going to pass what we're going to pass, and then you can deal with us, as equal constitutional players.
Well, lastly, on 2025, anything you're working on right now that you're got through the legislature and you're just holding your breath, let's see what happens with the governor. Anything in particular?
Well, it depends on who you ask what it's called, but the Small Business Protection Act that made changes to New York's consumer protection laws, and that was something. There was a lot of discussion right at the end of session where it was dead. Then all of a sudden, there were some changes, and it was alive, and it got passed. And this is one of those situations where both sides are going to be going in and wanting more. Consumer advocates are going to want to go back to what the old bill was, and business people are going to want a little bit more changes. I mean, you saw it. I'm not telling tales out of school. One of the sponsors, Michael Lasher, referenced it on the floor that, we're going to try to, get it back to where it was. This is something that everybody's going to get re-engaged on. I'm sure there's seas roiling behind the scenes, but, right now things are status quo.
Well, let's turn to 2026, and in your newsletter for Shenker, Russo, and Clark, you said that fall is when agendas are set, bill language is drafted, coalitions are built, and fiscal notes take shape, meeting legislators in district now, aligning your budget asks, and refining your message gives you leverage once Albany gets busy. If you finalize priorities, sponsors, and a simple one-page brief now, you'll hit opening day with momentum rather than scrambling to catch up. So how many of your clients are like, yeah, Doug, I'm ready. It's the fall. I'm ready to go. I'm not thinking about, my vacation and hanging on to the last few days that are nice. And how many are basically like, we can talk about this tomorrow, Doug?
Well, I think, obviously we try to get all of them. You try to do as much work ahead of time as possible. But, with certainly things on the federal level changing all the time, it's really difficult right now for clients to figure out exactly what they need to focus on. So for some clients, we can take one of the clients I represented, the Greater New York Automobile Dealers Association. We have a bill that we put in last year, and we're out trying to get sponsors on that. So that's, an active plan.
What's the bill?
The bill is one that would make corrections to a bill that we passed before that would allow, or would require, I should say, manufacturers to appropriately compensate dealerships for warranty work.
Okay.
It has to do with the time allowed for workers to perform the repairs. And this is important on a number of levels because we partner with our unions on this one because the less time they have, the less money they make.
And so for an issue like that, are you just lining up all of the different partners so that they're all on the same page? Is that about getting bill text over to LBDC? Where are you on something like that?
So with that, we've already got the bill text in. Knock on wood, so far we haven't heard anybody saying you got to change this, you got to change that yet. But we're preparing. So we have a bill, which makes it easier than to go out to the members and try to get them to sign on to the bill. So the bill exists, so you can tell them what it does.
Here's a bill number.
Yeah, that makes it a whole lot easier than starting from scratch. And of course, it's coordinating with our union partners, with our other association partners, and trying to make sure that we're all on the same page, saying the same thing.
For more than 100 years, the New York State Association of Counties has served as the united voice of New York's county leaders, fostering excellence in county government and advocating for sustainable funding and sensible legislation that protects local taxpayers and the essential services they rely on. Learn more at nysac.org. And in terms of getting bills introduced, I don't think a lot of people realize that in the Senate in particular, they are capped at how many bills they can introduce at a certain point. Are you coveting those, I think, 10 introductions that each member can get? Or do you say, hey, I get it. I know you have a clock here. You've got a limit to what you can do. I'll wait till December when it restarts, or 2026. How do you think about something like that?
Oh, it definitely comes into play.
Okay.
Like you know the date when it's set, when the 10 bill limit kicks in. And so you try to the best that you can, get your bill in before then, so that they're not saying, well, if I put this in, then maybe there won't be something else I put in. Now, even though there is a 10 bill limit, there are exceptions. Let's say a local issue comes flying out of nowhere. Obviously they're going to say, nope, sorry, you hit your 10. You can't take care of this local problem. So, but members are very aware, and they don't want to be in the position of having to go ask the leader and say, hey, I need another bill. You try to get that done beforehand. But yeah, are there situations where if it's a bill that isn't going to get done this year, if it's a bill that you don't really need in before session ends. You can say, you know what, I can wait.
We now have unbelievably policy-heavy budget bills. So when you are trying to pick your spots right now, do you take a flood the zone sort of approach? Let's get it into the governor's budget, and we'll try to get it as a standalone bill, or do you try to pick and choose your spots?
No, it's more of a flood the zone kind of approach. It always helps if you can make, particularly this year, if you can make an argument that there is even a tangential budgetary impact. Either it will save money or it will bring in money. So you try to at least give the governor's office something to hang their hats on. You don't get in the governor's budget, you go to the legislature and you say, hey, when you guys do your one houses, can you put this in there? You want to be at the table somehow through one of the three branches. And then, if at the end of it, if you aren't in the budget, you got your standalone bill.
Right now, how much of your work is expectation setting? Because you could have an issue, I imagine, that comes out of nowhere and a client wants it done in that upcoming legislative session. And you look at the field and go, this is something that represents a major sea change from the way Albany does business. And thus, it's going to take me a while to change the way people think about something and then eventually get a vote. So do you have to do some sort of expectation setting right now as well?
Oh, of course. You always say, look, understand that you want it now, and we'll work on reasons why it has to be done now. Mm-hmm. But you don't want to fool the client and say, absolutely, we're going to get this done, no problem. You do have to be realistic with them and say, this is a huge lift. This is something that it might take a couple years. Most of the clients who have outside counsel like we do, most of them are sophisticated enough to go, all right, I guess I understand that, but I want it now anyway.
And right now, I imagine there are some issues where maybe it's because it's a local issue or because there's a committee chair who might feel ownership over a certain issue. They're the person you have to go to for that bill. But when there is some sort of leeway and you get to choose who you're going to try to pitch an issue to, who is the person that you want carrying your bill, and why is it Amy Paulin?
Amy Paulin or Linda Rosenthal.
Sure, or Linda Rosenthal. Yep. Or Brad Hoyle, formerly Brad Hoylman in the Senate.
So, there are members who have staked out particular subject matter areas. Mm-hmm. If your bill is in that area, even if there's, they're not the committee chair, but they have ownership of that particular issue, you would go to them. But generally, if you, have free reign and you don't need to have the committee chair or anything else, you would go to somebody who will, work for you and work the issue. There are members who have hundreds of bills, and a lot of them don't go anywhere. Some of them have been around for a long time. And there are, other members where that if you get on their list of priorities, they will work exceptionally hard to get that done for you. So,
who are the workers? Who are the worker bees in the Assembly and Senate?
I'm going to keep that to myself as sort of a trade secret.
Is it just as simple as who gets the most bills, or should we also view maybe the quality and scope of some of the bills? Because it's one thing just to be like, yep, we got another study bill through, we got another who's going to regulate monkfish bill. It's another to be like, hey, this is something in the social media space or something more substantive.
Well, there are some members who get a ton of bills by virtue of the committee that they're the chair of, the Government Employees Committee. You do a list of people who pass the most bills, probably the one who sponsored the most bills. But they're very specific, unique, and, they have to be done individually. So, there will be a lot of bills. Others, there are members that, maybe they'll only have 5 priority bills, but they'll get 3 to 4 of them done. You know who they are, and you want to work with them, and you want to be one of those 5 bills.
Thinking about what I do, the journalism side of things, how much of your work right now is either with in-house PR people you have or outside PR people that you work with, trying to get some sort of parallel communications message going on with what's going on behind the scenes in terms of legislatively, so that there is a discussion about your issue in the media landscape. Is that a meaningful part of things?
Oh, yeah. Again, it depends on the issue. I mean, there's some issues that
maybe sunlight doesn't help so much.
I mean, I wouldn't have any of those, but
no. But the auto workers is a perfect one where it seemed like there was a coordinated PR push back in 2023, because I remember I think we had Kenny Burgos on our show, as well as maybe an auto tech person to talk about it. So there's clearly some parallel in that work. So are there other things right now where you're like, hey, let's ramp this up. People need to know what this issue is. We need to have this in editorial pages or on TV broadcasts so that the lawmakers themselves are having increased awareness about this, and not just the public.
Well, I think right now what you're seeing is, lawmakers kind of doing that. I see your Phil Steck sign up there. He just had an op-ed about, bringing back the stock transfer tax, which has been something that he has been. It
is a day that ends with, day. Yeah. So let's talk about the stock transfer tax. Sure.
But, he's out there doing that, and you're going to start seeing that with any number of I don't want to demean them by calling them pet issues, but
there are recurring issues here in Albany that constantly come up, and I think those are all things that we have on our mind. But I'm curious if there are ones that maybe aren't part of the lexicon, and that you feel like you need to get them into the media narrative. Because I think of something like the home care conversation. This was not even part of the dialogue 6 years ago, and then with the pandemic, there was this coordinated effort to highlight this issue. All we talk about is home care now, every year. Same thing, CDPAP somehow became an acronym that we use here, like people understand outside of Planet Albany. So are there issues where you're trying to, set the field, so to speak, with the media?
Yes, there are, but I think now is a little early.
Gotcha.
Because, you don't want to peak too soon.
Okay. Much like my high school days as I prepare for my 20th reunion.
I mean, I wasn't going to say that, but you want to build towards, something where you can show momentum and something like that. And right now, those vehicles aren't out there. There's not a state of the state coming up. There's not a budget coming up. There's not legislative budgets coming up. So you will see these things start later. Now what you're doing is you're having the behind-the-scenes discussions. You're planting the seeds with the legislators, with the governor's staff, and you're saying, look, this is going to be an issue. And then at some point as you move on, working with your, PR professionals, like, okay, now we're going to start doing op-eds. Now we're going to start doing ads on the various websites. And you sort of...
Like capitalpressroom.org? Would you like to buy some space, Doug? We can set you up with our underwriters. We can talk about that off air. But so a lot of this, in a perfect world, you're coordinating it. You're setting up what's going to happen from A to point Z. Obviously, none of this is done in a vacuum. So what are some of the outside forces that you think could be the most promising for some of your work, and are some of the most detrimental for the work that you're trying to do? Because 2026 is an election year. We've got who knows what kind of GOP challenge, either from Elise Stefanik, either from Bruce Blakeman. Don't sleep on Carl Hyde Jr. out in town of Bethany. We're going to have a Democratic primary potentially. So what are some of the outside forces that you're either bracing for, or maybe you're going to secretly lean into?
Well, I mean, it's all of those things. Okay. So all of the politics of 2026 are right now we're sitting like on the precipice of things that are going to happen. So, you're going to have the election in New York City, and you're going to see what happens. What does it mean if Mamdani wins? What does it mean if Cuomo wins? How does that play into where the legislature goes?
What if Curtis Sliwa wins, Doug?
Well, then, sales of berets will go through the
excellent.
roof.
Yeah. Don't sleep on Curtis Sliwa. I don't know where this love for Andrew Cuomo and Zoran Mamdani comes from. Do you know something I don't know?
I'm just trying to keep it under my hat.
Okay, good. Keep going. Yeah, sure.
Under my beret.
Sure.
So each of those things will have a huge impact as to what the focus is going to be, in the gubernatorial campaigns, in the legislative campaigns. The DSA is going to start making moves. There's going to be, trying to pull people to the left, trying to push people towards the center. That's something that always happens, but I think it's going to be way more so next year than I think we've ever seen before. And then when you layer on top of that all of the things coming down from the federal level, and that's where, if you're not, involved in any of those huge issues, where you really need to try to keep people focused as much as possible on, I don't want to call them little issues because they're very important to the clients, but you want to keep those things doing, because also there's something that the legislature and the governor can do. A lot of these big national issues, there's questions as to what they can do, whether it be effective. There's a lot of hypothetical there that people, we've never faced before, and we don't know exactly the answers to these things. And it makes it difficult for an entire legislative body to come to an agreement as, yes, this is something we can do and this is how we're going to do it. It's difficult enough to get them to do that anyway. And so that's why now you're working with your clients on, what their story is, who they need to tell it to, getting out there, making sure that it's as tight and important as possible, because you want to remind people in government what your client does, why it's important, and why it needs to be protected or enhanced or not cut or cut only a little bit, or, wherever you end up.
Well, we've been speaking with Doug Clark. He's the co-managing partner and government affairs team leader at Shenker Russo Clark. Doug, thanks for visiting us. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I had a great time.
And we're back with Working Rules, where we're going to unpack the fallout, if there is any, from Governor Kathy Hochul's appearance this past Sunday at the True Bethel Baptist Church in Buffalo, where the Western New York Democrat implored the black churchgoers not to spend their rebate checks at the liquor store and to instead buy something they really need. And our guest is Tyrone Stevens, who Planet Albany residents might remember from his time in the communications shop for then Governor Cuomo, who subsequently worked for 32BJ and Scott Stringer's 2021 mayoral campaign, and he's now a media consultant under his own shingle. So the reactions to the governor's comments have ranged from basically a shrug to the governor's political rivals on both sides of the aisle, Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado and Representative Elise Stefanik, both jumping on the comments and declaring them racist. When you learned about this gaffe, did you think this was going to be a political problem of any substance for the governor, or basically an afterthought in a couple days that maybe gets brought up at the LCA show but probably is never heard from again?
Yeah, I think this is a blip on the radar, if that, frankly. I don't think it registers much. And yes, Antonio Delgado I think he made a video, and I think he's tried to make some hay out of this, obviously at least Stefanik. But we've had sort of a united outcry from a very angry, motivated opposition to sort of fill the media ecosystem here with messages attacking the governor on this. I don't think this is going to be something that lasts. I think we move on, and I think we move on relatively quickly. There's a lot happening in this world, and I don't know if there's going to be a ton of time for this, particularly because I don't think this actually reflects a pattern on the governor. I think this is a one-off exception, and I think even the pastor of the church has come out and defended her, and we'll probably be moving on pretty quickly.
I think the best defense was one that was included in Politico New York, where they talked with Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, who was present for this. And the quote is,
yes.
I personally wasn't offended because she actually said herself that she goes to the liquor store. I know that she's Irish, and if you understand the history of a lot of people who are Irish, they have significant issues with alcohol abuse. So I don't think it was intended to be racist at all.
It's awesome.
She probably could have just said, I wasn't offended.
God bless the majority leader, and I'll let her opinion stand on its own. It's an interesting defense. I think you're right. I think it might be a little more than we need here. When the governor's talking about the rebate checks, it's probably better that she stay focused on, I'm the one putting money back in your pockets, not telling you how to spend the money in your pockets.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about immediately as it came out was this idea that I wonder how it played in the room. I wasn't there, and from all reports, it seems like this was something that people really accepted. It was part of the tenor of the conversation there. Do you, as someone in the communications business, ever worry about having a principal, though, who is in a situation where they might get caught up in the moment of an atmosphere that they're in, where they might say something that plays well in the room, but ultimately, if other people hear it, it's a problem?
Right. Well, that's always the catch-22, right? I mean, first of all, you're a politician, especially if you're a politician at a high level. you have to get out there. You have to do these things. You have to do these events. But there's always that danger of getting too comfortable, right? And you get too comfortable, and you slip into some jargon or an offhand joke that maybe lands in parts of the room or doesn't quite land, but is fine in the room, but then sounds like a problem to those who aren't in the room. So that's always a threat. You definitely worry about it. As someone who's been in communication shops in the past, it's definitely something you think about. And there are times when, okay, he got too comfortable here and went off script. And that's always an ever-present threat. But politicians, high-level politicians, know to be disciplined. Kathy Hochul, we're now entering year 5. So, after 100 events, after 4+ years in office, I think she's got a pretty strong batting average. She's been a solid and steady enough politician where, opponents are relying on Kathy Hochul to make a bunch of gaffes and self-inflicted errors. That's a bad strategy for victory on their part.
Were there ever times when you were working with former city controller Scott Stringer or former governor Andrew Cuomo where you were ever a little nervous about what they might say, or did you feel like they were pretty disciplined, at least during your tenure with them?
They were pretty disciplined, but I guess it would have been 2018, 2019, 2018, later in the primary campaign. But it was a government event, and I think it was a bill signing. I think the governor said, we were going after Trump, and makes a comment about, how America was never that great. And then just an avalanche hits the press office, right? It's like we were kind of taking mortar fire and just kind of had to hunker down. But that's part of it. That's part of it. We got through that. And more and more, the landscape has been so tilted in terms of the public sensitivity to quote unquote gaffes. You have to make it a pretty egregious one, more so today than I think you probably had to do a couple of years ago in terms of a misstatement. I think that's Trump too. Trump has just warped the landscape since he entered national politics.
Well, yeah, I want to seize on this point that you bring up, because there's this idea that's being pushed from media consultants about the A word, authenticity, that the people, the voters, are more willing to forgive a slip-up if they seem to perceive it as part of that authentic person and who they are, and speaking off the cuff, not scripted to death. Do you agree with that? And is that something you would lean into, even at the risk of maybe saying something that isn't too detrimental, like what the governor said, but is still stupid?
Right. Yeah, I do think that credibility and authenticity, they're intertwined. And more so today, I think voters are really are looking for that. I see this in opinion poll after opinion poll when it comes to what characteristics voters want to see from their candidates. And that authenticity continues to be a top character trait that people want to feel from their candidates. I definitely think that's at least a part of it here. If you look at Zohran Mamdani in New York City, his success, yes, it's affordability, but it's also we trust this message from this messenger because he seems credible and he seems authentic, right? So there's pieces of that make his campaign possible, and it starts with the characteristic of he's authentic and he seems credible. For voters, I would say the question in their minds is less, are you left or right, or how far left or how far right are you? But it's, are you full of it or are you for real? That's what you see play out, and it manifests in different ways, particularly in the outcomes and aftermaths of these gaffes, so-called gaffes, and how voters respond to them, which has definitely changed in recent years.
Well, we've been speaking with Tyrone Stevens. He is a media consultant. Ty, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they should go about trying to hire you?
Oh, gee. If you want to get in touch with me, send me an email, tystevens33@gmail.com. That's my personal email.
And if they want to get constant Nick updates, where should they follow you on Twitter?
Gosh. Well, you can follow me on Twitter. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Non-stop tweeting about the Knicks.
Non-stop. It's my first love in the world. God help me. You got to blame my parents for that. But at Tyrone C. Stevens on Twitter.
Thanks, Ty. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Anything can happen, as last night's Bills game will attest to. I'm still in shock by that, in a good way.